Don't even let the stream is on. Hey. I'd like to call the August 11, 2023 Legal Legislative Committee to order at this time. Let's take just a moment of silence instead of prayer at this point, and you think just a few moments about how great it is to live in a country like we're living in, and that we can take care of business like this before the public, and we have good business to deal with. Let's do that. Thank you. I'd like to ask Mylan Blake to lead us in the pledge of the flag.
Stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which is one nation under God, indivisible, liberty. We have a agenda before you that we're going to be dealing with, but before that, I'd like to share. I think I'll do this in other business, and more appropriate than just to say we did have, as most of you know, a legal legislative meeting. It wasn't a full legal legislative meeting. It was with Adam Lowe, our senator, as well as Representative Kevin Raper that joined us. I'm going to summarize what was done in that meeting, basically shared by Senator Lowe. We did have a robust discussion with him, and at a later time we'll probably get into that. Let me share the other business with your permission. Since we published the agenda, we met with Senator Lowe and Representative Raper and discussed our desire to have the ability to establish our own reappraisal cycle. Representative Raper shared with us he has a bill to provide permissive authority to counties to set their own cycle as 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 years. Representative Raper indicated a resolution supporting the bill or requesting the local portion on this would bolster his bill. Senator Lowe shared plans for a bill to reinstate 0.25% of the sales tax to counties. He explained about 20 years ago, the state increased sales tax with the intention of returning 0.25% to the counties. Unfortunately, the 0.25% never made its way to the counties. Senator Lowe asked that we consider a resolution of support for this proposal. You might keep that in mind as we move through our agenda. We have the minutes for your review, and we had a very productive meeting that provided this minutes. If you take a look at that, there were some great things that we were able to do. We went through page by page through the policies and reviewed those, and then made major decisions that changed many of our policies. So as you review those, I'll give you a second to do that, and then we'll ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
It's been moved and seconded by Commissioner Blake and Commissioner Offord. Any discussion? Shall we call the roll? Oh, we don't have to call the roll. All those in favor?
No. Aye.
Aye. It's carried. Let me give the mayor an opportunity to speak to us. not on our agenda, but anything you'd like to share with us, Mr. Mayor? Anytime?
I don't have anything pertinent to any of your subjects today to report, so
Okay,
thank you.
Mr. Mayor. Okay, we'll move to our agenda, if you will. Illegal tire dumping. This was mine. If you remember, when we had our last meeting, we were concerned, and I was concerned through the work that Commissioner Blake and the Keep America Beautiful Committee and all those were doing, that there was not enforcement being done. What's happening when they're found? So I shared that information with law enforcement and found, as you have found, that there is now enforcement being done. There has already been an individual that's been brought to court. I think a substantial fine was provided to him. He pleaded guilty and returned those tires, took them from the site that he was dumping from and cleared that. So the illegal tire dumping that we wanted to put on our next agenda is on the agenda, but it's just a report from me that we followed up on that from this committee, from the work that Commissioner Blake and others have done to make it. I think Cindy Slater and others really spent a lot of time on this. We were concerned as a committee that once you find them, or you find the tires and do all that work, that there's not enough work being done to find the perpetrator. So we now found the perpetrator, and we've seen it work, and I just want to make that a point of record to you all for the work that has already been done by this commission. If that's any discussion on that item. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I
Mr.
just
Blake.
want to follow up and say that when this was all done, I don't think there was any perception that there would be a silver bullet. Like one time, it was.
Right.
It's going to be an ongoing process. It's
Right.
going to require due diligence and stuff like that, and ongoing. But I was pleased that, I'm not pleased that somebody committed a crime, so to speak, but
Right.
that they were afforded due process.
Right.
It went through the system. Some people wanted it to be a little bit faster, but that's our system. And he was punished according to the law, or held accountable to the law, and it was reported in the banner and stuff like that. So I think the idea that we're serious about this is the word is getting out. So
Very good.
in Bradley County, we still get some reports of illegal dumping here and there, but not near as much. So I don't know if this had anything to do with that, but I
Thank
never
you.
thought that there would be a silver bullet on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Mayor.
And just ask Mylan, is KAB still offering the reward for future?
They're meeting on August the 27th, and that's going to be one of the things that it's talked about is how to continue that if it is all possible.
Hopefully they can, because that doesn't hurt to have that out there.
Right. So that'll on the August 27th. I'll report back to the mayor and the committee what the KAB decides to do on that.
So you think they're going to go ahead and you're going to present that to KAB?
Yeah, that's on the
Okay.
agenda for August 27th.
Okay. So then you can bring back to us
Yeah.
if we need it. Great. Good work. And thanks for personally what you've done. You spent a lot of time, as well as Commissioner Slater. Next item agenda is the 911 fee. This has been discussed considerably, particularly in our budget time, when a representative from the 911 board came and shared, and our mayor has shared in detail that challenge. This floor is now open to discuss what you would like to see with the 911 fee.
I'll just
Mr. Blake.
take that. The 911 fee has been going on since Director Joe Wilson was there. I mean, and trying to understand, and Mayor had said it the other day when we had Senator Lowe and Representative Raper here. When we get our Verizon bill or AT&T or whatever vendor, you see that 911 fee on there.
Right.
And it's not, Mayor, I was going to ask this the other day. It's not just cell phones that get the 911. If you still have a landline, you still get charged. So, cell phone is increasing, but if you still have landlines or any type of telecommunication, there's a 911 fee. And I just think as the mayor said, there needs to be more accountability. And to take that a step further, I don't think the state should be putting restrictions on the 911. They only want it to go towards equipment or technology, right? They don't want to fund salaries or whatever. I get that in concept because not every county does 911 like we do, where it's a joint effort. But I think they should I think they should look at the restrictions they apply and target it to the counties like us. We have a
Yeah.
joint with the city.
Right.
We enter into a contract. Other counties may have their 911 center at the sheriff's office or what have you, but reduce those restrictions, allow the 911 committee and their board to decide best how to use the money. Those are my thoughts. Mayor, you may differ, I don't know.
Mr.
I
Mayor,
can add, the restrictions, it's fine if they did away with them. That wouldn't help in our case because we provide all those services. A lot of counties don't. But like I said the other day, the problem is, in my opinion, we're not getting the amount of money back from the state
Right.
that the growth is not
Mhm.
not showing up.
Right.
Are they retaining too much of it? I think it's a flawed formula that they use.
Mhm.
You know, with sales tax, it goes back to the communities where it's collected. There's some discussion about they don't always know where that phone is located. Because if you'll notice, you'll call a lot of people on their cell phone and their phone may be out of Maryville. You know, it's not, so there is some of that, but surely in today's technologies, but the formula that they're using, I don't believe is going back to the states that's creating the revenue. I mean, the counties that's creating the revenue. It has to be that. There's communities that have less growth, probably getting percentage-wise more of the revenue. Having said all that, it's a state issue, though.
Mhm.
The point is, when you're looking at the 911 budget, their revenue should be growing like, sort of like sales tax. I mean, we don't have inflation there, I understand, but we know the number of phones is growing, so the revenue should be growing, and the revenue coming back from the state isn't growing much. Not saying it's not growing at all, but it's not growing much.
Right.
And that's what we need to encourage or ask. You might want to do it as your committee, ask the state legislators to look into that.
Yeah.
Senator Gardenhire got a lot of things improved a few years ago, and one of the things is now the Department of Revenue is collecting it and sending it back, thinking it would be more like sales tax, but it hasn't increased like everyone thought. They increased the rate, but it didn't increase the revenue much. And we know there's more cell phones out there today than there was, say, a year ago.
Right.
Well, I have no doubt. If they weren't selling more phones, stores like Verizon would close,
Yeah, that's true.
and Target, and all the places that sell those. So we know the number's growing, which means the revenue should be growing. So where is it going? But that's going to take some work with somebody to get the answers to it. I think it will end up being a formula thing of how they send it back, but we never could get to the bottom of it. So hopefully the legislators can, and I would suggest you all request them to seriously look at that.
So, may I ask a question to you? The response that we should make as a committee to the commission, what should it go to our elected officials or straight to a controller or whoever's over this?
I think it's going to take the legislators
Okay.
checking into it.
Great.
And hopefully it doesn't even involve the department you said, because they won't go very far if it does.
Okay.
They need to check into the department that collects the revenue from 911 fees and returns it to the 911 districts,
Right.
and see if there's a flaw in the formula. The bottom line is to get to the answer of why our revenues are not growing like we feel they should be. And that's really for all 911 districts across the state, but mainly for communities like ours that are growing.
Yeah.
Not every county's growing like that, but like Bradley County's growing, the revenue's not growing proportionately. And so therefore their budgets continue to increase like all of ours, but the revenue isn't keeping up, which is why the city and county had to kick in some this year.
Commissioner Blake.
Just a question on that. It's more educational, Mayor. You know, that in my neighborhood, we had another person moving from another state. They're keeping their number from that state. So when it pops up on my phone, I'm like, California or Michigan or whatever. But their bill comes to their address here in Cleveland.
Yeah, I have heard talk that is part of the problem, but yet they could track it by the bill. Don't track, but you know, I don't know, but that's something that will be part of that they need to check into. is that person that's using a phone that has a California number paying the 911 fee to California? If they're paying it to Tennessee, okay, how do we know they live in Bradley County? Follow their bill. There's answers to it, but has Department of Revenue done that?
Right.
And they're gonna have to be asked by the legislators to do it. The
So-
state board asked for the rate increase, and that was a fight. But it really wasn't a rate. It was, at that time, it was sort of a rate and a collection issue, but the rate has been adjusted. It didn't fix it, so now we need to go back to the collection issue, in my opinion, and follow through. But somebody's gonna have to spend some time in the Department of Revenue finding out how it works and where it's flawed at, and making, legislative changes to how it works.
So, Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to make a motion that this committee recommend to the full commission to draft a letter to our legislative bodies, and including Senator Swan. I know he's got a tiny, tiny little part, but he's still a senator up there in the Senate as well. And if the committee and the full commission deems it, because we're in a joint venture with the city, they have an interest in this as well. If they would join in on that letter, I think that would, Representative Raper, most of his districts in the city as well. Anyway, I make a motion that we proceed with that. And basically what the letter should do is ask them to get with was it Department of Treasury or Department of
I think it's Department of Revenue that's
Department of
handling it.
Revenue with respect to the 911 fee on the collection, their growth numbers, their projected growth numbers, and basically their payout or their formula that the mayor was referring to in detail.
Ms. Moultrie, will you give us a summary of that motion while you're writing that down?
Sorry.
Okay.
Perfect.
That's your
She's
motion.
good.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yes. Commissioner Hughes seconds that motion. Any further discussion?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Good work. Okay, HCI funding. Commissioner Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, the HCI is getting ready to start their work here pretty soon. We'll have some numbers here in a couple of weeks, and then they'll start their process. We did change one thing last year, I think it's for the benefit, and that is that if an applicant doesn't qualify under the rules, that they're going to notify them at the beginning of the process. They have steps, if you will, instead of proceeding forward. That's already in place. One of the things I'd like for this committee and the full commission to consider is when I came on board in 2014, it was already established that there was a certain amount of money that was set aside for water projects. It's been, I believe, very successful. We've done a number of water projects over the years. But I'd like to ask the committee to consider expanding that. We just, I think, had a very successful opioid, we'll call it, repair program. We spent about $1 million on it, but that money has been, I wouldn't say dried up, we used it all, and I don't think there's any reason to go use any more federal money. But in the coming years, we do have HCI money. In the past, we earmarked, I think, a little over 30,000, 33,000, thereabouts. And the proposal that I'd like to present to the committee is pretty much the same rules, and we can iron that out, what makes sense. I'm glad Adam's here, is water projects and septic repair. That's yeah.
But septic's what you meant.
Yeah, that's what, I'm sorry. I get tongue-tied and twisted sometimes, right? Not increase the amount. In other words, I'm not saying, just to be clear, not saying 30,000 for water and 30,000 for septic. 30,000, so it'll be a first come, first serve. For example, if somebody says have a $5,000 water project and it gets approved, then that comes off the 33, and the rest can be used for whatever. So that's the kind of concept. But you know, with the federal money, we went with an 80-20. 80% we would fund and 20% on the resident. With water in the HCI, it's a different formula, so we need to iron that out. If we need to stick to the 80-20 for septic repairs, and water will stay to its formula or whatnot. But I just think the idea of including septic repairs, I agree with the mayor. In the past, he said that, you know, this probably borderlines on something that the local government shouldn't really be, and I'm not for using property tax or sales tax, but this is the interest off the principle from the sale of Bradley Memorial years ago. And it definitely falls under the health and welfare and the quality of life of Bradley County as we repair those. And so I present that to the committee as an idea for the committee's consideration.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I do have one question. As far as the formula, I know with ACI and the water, the city, it's 1/3 broken up all the way through. With septic, would you have to make that, am I thinking wrong on this? Oh,
50% for the property owners, and then we will enter into agreements with the local utility district with whom the properties lies within their footprint. So, for instance, if you live in Cleveland Utilities, if the proposal's $100,000, then you guys that live on that street will be on the hook for $50,000, and then we will in theory take 25%. And Cleveland Utilities will take 25%. But now with Cleveland Utilities, they'll only go up to $20,000. So oftentimes we exceed the $25,000 policy. But that's it roughly.
okay.
And may I also note one other thing? And with the public water fund, our dollars only go to expand the water lines in the right-of-way. So in addition to the 50% that the property owner would have to pay, they also have to get a plumber to come and run a line from that water main to their home, and then also pay a tap fee, which is roughly $1,000. So they would also incur that cost with the project as well.
So that would have to be shared to any individual that applies, that their neighborhood would go along with that for. There's going to be a line through all those, so that person that opines to the committee and applies would have to make sure that the others would want to go along with it, right?
Not necessarily. Certainly you would think that off the bat and off the cuff, but we have had instances where someone really wants it, and he's got 4 other people that share the road, the road with him, and they refuse. They say, we just don't have the discretionary funding in our household budget to provide these funds. So he pays for it himself. Yeah. And guess what? Those folks can then tap on for free without taking on the responsibility of the 50%. So it doesn't exclude anyone. Yeah. So they don't have to all agree. You just have to have one person be willing to put up the 50%. And
pay for it, yeah.
Correct.
So
and septic I think septic will work a little different because this will be at the parcel level or instead of like a development stuff like that. Plus, we also have the permitting piece that comes from the state. Let me ask you. I'm looking at you. How did that work with getting the state to do the permits and all that kind of stuff? I mean, they're still going to have to be included. If we're basically saying we're going to set aside X amount of dollars per year HCI pending funding, but state still has to permit all this, right?
That's the case whether we were granting money or not. If I'm just a homeowner that wants to pay for it all myself, I still have to get a septic repair permit from TDEC, so they're going to be involved.
So, Mayor, do you think that the formula that we came up with, the 80-20, we paid 80% and the resident paid 20%, worked? I mean, is that sustainable if we allocate $33,000 for water and water will work under this formula, which we had, and septic will work under the formula that we used with the ARP money? I'll put that in a formal question.
So the bottom line is, you're sort of suggesting we'll do roughly 25% on water, but we'll do 80 on septic.
That's right. That's what I'm, you can knock
Um,
it down, I get it. But they're different,
It certainly makes it more affordable for the homeowner. The other thing you'd want to consider is you capped projects at 15,000.
yeah,
And so you may want to consider adjusting
Yeah,
that
that's a good
to
point.
stretch the 33,000 more.
I mean,
But, you know, two projects could
yeah.
eat that up real quick.
And
so.
if we use up all 33,000 for the next 2 or 3 years, I mean, at least we're doing our part as far as making Bradley County a little bit, but we're not using property tax or sales tax. I think there's still septic issues out there. Yeah, my concern would be is the part where we started saying that the solution was for them to tap into sewer. I don't, that's,
Well,
that was a viable solution, and I don't know if we want this money to be used like that or not. So I'm just teeing up the idea because
you
it
would
was
be-
popular.
yeah.
Some of the other commissioners I know have talked about it, so I feel that I'm bringing it up.
That is part of the add-on. The tap onto sewer was covered. You could easily take that out, but that is a requirement. TDEC will not issue a permit for repair if you're on a sewer line.
So it needs to be a part of the solution. And if TDEC says that that's the only solution, but so a cap will need to be put in place.
The,
I have
av-
to,
the
what was-
average is about $9,000 for the total cost of
Okay.
the project. That's been the average.
The average is $9,000
Now
per
that's-
project.
Yes. So
Okay.
80% of that would picked up by the county and 20% by the homeowner.
So if we lowered the amount that we were willing to spend, like the mayor said, on water is way in 25%, but we've gone over a couple times. So 50%, so a 50-50 deal, would that be better? I mean, I'm asking. Mayor, would you think?
I would think it's better, but I've also, as devil's advocate,
Please.
I know you guys are wanting to do this, it's politically correct, and you're gonna do it probably, but, and I know you keep stressing you're not using tax money. All revenue goes into one pot, and I can't tell you which penny came from where usually. Keep in mind, we have never spent Bradley County money, and I'll call it all tax money, on what I call private projects on private property until the ARP money came along, and we sort of made an exception for that kind of thing because we had such a big need. So when you approve to do this with HCI money, you're voting to continue to spend money, government money, on private property for private issues. And we've already helped $1 million. We've spent $1 million fixing that problem, and you're voting to continue doing that. It's no different than if a majority of our people had cars that were tore up and they need help on them. Okay, we're going to start helping them fix their cars. Is that government's role? And my septic tank, and I have one, tears up. Is it government's role to fix my septic tank? Now, we've done, like I said, $1 million of those. But the ARP money's gone. Do we want to continue to do that? And again, I'm just playing devil's advocate because you need to think about it. Because it's a can of worms that could spread to other things. Do you want to continue doing that?
Well, the other additional point I'll throw out here is HCI committee. HCI committee will have to be looking at all this.
No.
And as it doesn't go through HCI.
The water projects right now are done outside of HCI. The
So the
application-
committee's not involved in this.
No, this is outside of the committee's purview, right?
That money's taken off, and then they make decisions on what remains. So, yeah.
At one time, we had the Southeast Development part of that formula. But I don't know if we. Okay.
Further discussion. Anybody else?
I was teeing up the idea, and there's some support. There's some, I wouldn't say not support, but the only way we get things done is to bring them to the committee. So
Commissioner Alford.
I kind of agree with the mayor. I just think that we're maybe opening a can of worms there that I don't know that we can ever shut that can back down. And once you open that can, because I can see a lot of problems. And if you just put 30,000 in there, that could be gone in a day, or one project, or two projects, or three projects. I don't think you're going to help a lot of people with just that amount of money. So I think we've done like Mayor said, I've done $1 million in that already. I just don't see us going on public land to private land. I'm sorry, private land to start projects like this.
I noticed with the water grant that we have, and I've got to agree with the mayor and Louis on this, is that even on it, when it starts stepping on the private property side, the private property owner has to pay that amount, the tap-on fee, so on any lines that's ran from there to there. The only thing that we're covering is honestly what would be there for the public.
Well, I think the discussion is well intended, but it probably needs some more discussion before we move forward. Sense that from the committee.
Well,
Further discussion.
yeah,
Sure,
right now,
sure.
33 something is going to be earmarked anyway. So if we need to chat about it more, we can.
Further discussion. So we move along. Emergency Services Committee, Mr. Blake.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, on this one, as you know, at one time, we basically had the EMS committee and the fire committee, and they were two separate committees. In fact, at one time, the fire committee was civilian-based. And then they made a decision, and I guess we'll just say we decided to disband that because of that. And then the mayor appointed Director Chief Fairbanks over both, and it just made sense to bring it to one committee for logistical reasons and stuff like that. As we know, that's now changed, so I think it's best for the committees, the respective departments. I think it'll make this commission more efficient and effective if we go back to the two committees. The same structure, 5 members appointed by the chair, and work. They have their own budgets. Fire has its own fund, its own tax rate and stuff like needs and all that kind of stuff. So at this time, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to amend. Is it a resolution, Lori, that amend the resolution to make the EMS committee its own 5-member committee appointed by the chair, and the fire committee a 5-member committee appointed by the chair as well. I'll put that in form of motion. Thank you.
For that motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Hughes seconds. Motion by Commissioner Blake. Any further discussion? Commissioner Hall.
I guess my question would be why we are the committee that right now not working, or why we need to separate them again?
Commissioner Hughes.
And I'm the actual chair over those those one committee as of now. It is a handful to take care of both of them and try to keep up with everything all at one time, especially during the meetings. At one time, we had several members on there, and it even made it more difficult to try to work everything in. I've been saying for a while that since it's been separated, it probably need to be separated back out just to make it easier and better for the commission as far as being able to talk about one thing. Because what happens, you come back to report on it, and it's like, okay, what all did I talk about? Because you talk about so much. I mean, you're talking about a meeting typically will go about 2 hours easily just because it's so heavy.
Would this be made up of all commissioners, or are we going to go back with public people too?
No, Mayor, I'm sorry. I look at it as an internal committee appointed by the chair, a 5-member of commissioners, and it follows in the rules of an internal committee where we have to publish the agenda, just like your law enforcement, just like my finance.
I think the last director challenge was to keep both feeling like he gave full attention to each one. And it was, we have twins in my family, and you want to make sure that they both get the same. So I think that it worked well, and it worked. The individuals involved did a super job with it. But I think as a member of this committee. Sir?
If we did this, would we start that now or future?
I think
I
it
think
would
the
start,
effective date would be September 1.
yeah, when we start the,
Yeah, with the chair. This gets it in place so that when he or she is appointed at our first meeting in September, the committee structures will be in place for them to decide what members they want to do. So we could wait till after September, I guess, but it's go ahead and do it now and get everything in place so that it's all structured.
this motion basically says we move back to as we had with the two departments, with the director of each one, appointed by the chair.
I'm gonna try to have a meeting coming up shortly, just as a, but
I think effective date September 1.
Other discussion? Commissioner Alford.
This is not referencing that committee, the committees, but just a question, since Mr. Hughes is here and the mayor's here. I got pretty good report the other day. How's the hospital and the ambulance situation going? Because I understand last week it was like 6 ambulances stacked up and nobody working the emergency room. So I was wondering where are we on that, because of the numbers of people?
I guess in the last 6 months, probably, it has gotten better most of the time. There are still times that there are issues because, like everyone else, there's still staffing issues out there. But it's less often now. So bottom line is it's better, but the problem hasn't gone away, of course. But that's the best way I know to say it. It's better, but we still have issues from time to time.
Commissioner Alford.
You mentioned staffing. Is also understand this might not be anything pertinent or for the public, but understand that the doctors in the emergency room and a lot of the other doctors worked on a contract with different companies, and they were evidently that contract's running out or something. Was there a shortage of doctors at the emergency room, or does anybody know anything about that?
I don't know that.
My discussion with a board member of the hospital a few weeks ago was that it is difficult to get doctors, like my primary doctors, to work in and out of the hospital. So that core group of our own doctors, it's difficult because of their schedules and their work style to get those individuals. So they have these generalists, as hospitalists they call them, that are assigned to the hospital, and then there's certain days. But I think this new director is probably one of his major challenges. It seems like he's on the game every day and doing his thing. So that there was an heartening that's going to be happening. But just like getting in to see our own doctors, it's difficult. There's times they're not scheduled. Yes, Commissioner Hughes.
Commissioner Alford, what I'll do, we keep records on our wait times still. The ambulance service is still keeping up with that. I can request, or if I can ask Adam or the mayor to get a copy of that for the commission. We'll get that for you so you can see what's going, or how it's going so far. But we've actually, our wait times have been doing decent. I mean, we have a few here and there, but overall, it's better than what it was when we first started.
I guess my concern is the wait time is because of lack of personnel in the emergency room that's dealing with emergency situations, or is it because of the fact that we're overloading them with emergencies? I guess that's my concern. I just don't think there's enough personnel to deal with it.
I guess those three questions might just need to be asked to the director. You might be able to work toward that.
I can answer some of that. I know from an EMS perspective, Chief Guerin feels like they've really made improvements. Now, that's not to say that there aren't one-off days or, you know, a few hours where they can get backed up, but he feels pretty confident that they've made a lot of improvement. As far as staffing, I know they've made an effort to do away with a lot of the contract nurses that they used during COVID and when they were really short-staffed. Those are just a lot more expensive on payroll.
Right.
You can make great money as a contract nurse right now, and so they've tried to get away from that. The last 2 or 3 months, they've made significant improvements in bringing new employees in and back. I mean, to the tune of several hundred have been hired. I don't know what the breakdown is on the ER, but they have a new ER director too. There's been a little bit of turnover in the last couple of years in that position, but they feel like they've got a good handle on leadership there. So I don't know. At the last board meeting, they reported that their staffing level was good. The question was asked specifically about the ER, and they felt like they were in a better place than they've been in the last 6 months. So the incident that you're describing about 6 ambulances, I'm not familiar with what maybe happened at that moment. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Mr. Hughes.
And I'm gonna ask you a question, actually. I think and it's not really a question, technically, but would you think that the report that we're starting to keep for us and them has helped the hospital as far as ER and wait times and things? It's helped shed light on a few things, I believe.
It has. I think, you know, there was a period of time where EMS was tracking one way and the hospital was tracking another, and so once both sides were able to get on board with the same system, that helped. I think just from the hospital knowing that there were more eyeballs on that, I think certainly pushed them to improve, and they were aware that there were issues. So I don't believe that EMS is still tracking daily like they were. I think one of the last meetings that they had together, and Chief Guerin and hospital leadership meet pretty frequently and talk even sometimes daily, but they both felt like it had improved to the point where they could both sides take a breath and not have to be so detailed in their tracking. Obviously, the system's still there if we needed to go back to it, but I could ask him when the last time they tracked those times like they were and try to get that report, but I know that recently they've not been doing that, either side.
Is that something, which I can set that meeting, that'll be one of the things that probably stay in place, not for any
Sure.
other reason than to help us with our staff.
Yeah.
Not so much to put the hospital
Right.
on, just to keep us up.
Right. It was good for instances like this to go back and look at what happened, to see if it really was a one-off or if there was a trend that had started back up. So I think I would agree.
Commissioner Ruffalo.
I don't understand why we ever quit doing that. We need to make sure we follow up on that, because it seems like it's a constant pattern. And we let it off for a while and it got better, but now it looks like it might be getting back to the old thing. So I think we need to stay on top of it consistently, asking for that time frames, not back off of it. Thank you.
And Commissioner Hughes, you'll follow up on that?
Oh, well, we'll be setting an EMS committee meeting coming up shortly,
Great.
extremely shortly.
Well, we've moved over into the other business.
We never voted
Oh,
on
sorry,
that.
I'm sorry. Okay. So, got my train of thought going. Emergency Services Committees, now to be a formal committee with fire and emergency to be separated. You want to read the motion again? Right. Appointed by the chair. Yeah. Right. Okay, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
All those opposed, sign. Carried. Now we've moved over into other business. I thought it would be good just to outline some of the quick, I'll do this quickly, of what came up in the meeting. Some of you were unable to be able to attend, and wasn't really a formal meeting with our committee, legal legislative. We were able to opine ourselves in a group, and then, as you would know, the senator had a lot to say, as well as we won't go into every area in detail at all. Just the challenge of progress came up from us about county roads and how we deal with that. And I know we're getting some money, hopefully, from the state to help out with county roads, but to look if there is some way for counties like ours that are progressing so well with the constructions. I do think with the state there's discussions about impact fees, but at the same time hasn't come to our levels, and I don't think they're going to be doing that. Homeless came up, and ultimately the need for mental health services for homeless, and the challenge we're going to have in the next few years through the state helping us. The opioid problem came up with fentanyl particularly, and we all agree that our law enforcement teams are both involved in moving forward, but that's a major challenge. I-75, particularly I-75 South past the exit 20 exit, and then a discussion briefly about 64 Highway. White Oak particularly is the big one, getting across that road that has been called to the attention of the commission. That was a very, we're very fortunate to have our elected officials in Nashville having sat in the same seats that we've sat in. And we're fortunate to know what we're dealing with, and we know very well what they're dealing with. Other business that you might have, anything you want to bring up? Commissioner Blake.
Real quick, Crystal, as you know, from time to time, we kind of get sued. And for the most part, we're covered under our insurance policy and that deductible. Who determines what that deductible is going to be? In other words, here's where I'm getting at. Some of these that we talk about and I've read about are really, I don't know how to say this nicely, are just crazy lawsuits. I mean, they're I don't know how else to say it, but they shouldn't max out the $5,000 deductible, in my opinion. Who determines that we're going to use up all $5,000? Because it seems like every single one of them is that. Does that make sense?
Yes. So, if the claim goes to the claim gets turned over to our insurance counsel. If they don't spend $5,000, then we don't pay the whole $5,000. So occasionally, I'm sure you've seen one that's $3,200. So the bottom line is getting rid of pretty much any lawsuit is going to cost $5,000 worth of attorney time.
So no
the
matter,
answer to your question is, in order to get
that's why I
rid
asked
of or to get a claim, even if it's, I'll use the word frivolous in nature.
Frivolous, that's the word I was looking for.
You are still going to, Mayor could probably do it quickly, if you do the math on $5,000 at an hourly rate, that's going to be eaten up fairly quick. Assuming it's $200 an hour, that's not a lot of attorney hours. Even if a case is frivolous and you file a motion to dismiss, you have to hear that motion to dismiss. So the answer to your question is most of the time it takes more than $5,000.
That answers the question. It doesn't matter the frivolousness
yes.
of it. It's because the one I saw last was like, and it did. It took a whole whopping 2 seconds, but it was $5,000 on it, and they add up. So anyway, thank you for the answer.
Any further business? Thanks to our county attorney. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Alford. That hand wasn't high enough. Oh, my bad. Oh, no, I'm good. No,
You're right there. Just something I've been giving a little meditation to is the fact that we ask our audience when they get up and do end of the committee or end of meetings, communication with the audience, I
Right.
guess. We give them 5 minutes.
Right.
I'm just wondering if we could float the idea that we do ourselves a 3-minute thing, with the exception of when you do a committee, I'm talking about committee only report, that it could be a little longer. Rather than sitting here, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes and go through committees and reports from districts, we might say. Just to limit ourselves to a 3-minute, with the exception of some committees. I just
It's a
throwing
good
that out
thought.
for
That's a good thought
conversation.
for us, yeah. That would do away with the messages some of us have. We speak and preach, and some of us get into some of that. But, that's an idea. What do you think?
I'll go ahead and say it. I don't know that you can limit your members. You can probably suggest that they limit it. I don't know that it's a legal question or what, but I just don't know that you can limit your members.
It would be tough for a chair to enforce it.
Well, yeah, it'd definitely be that.
And you're a member of the commission, so it would apply to you too.
Yeah, it would apply to me too, and that's probably what he's wanting to do.
That's the reason I was floating the idea.
I'm just kidding, Mayor. I'm just kidding. But if I may, on that, I mean, with committees, our internal committees, we now have this rule. It's fine, but can we limit? I guess this is a crystal question or whatever. Can we limit to the things that are on the agenda? So I'll take finance for mine, for example. And we're talking about, like we did the other day, the cash flow statement was on the agenda. Who knows? And we may have somebody wants to talk about the potholes on Inman Street. I mean, it has nothing to do with what finance is for that day. So in other words, my question is, can we limit community audience, their 5 minutes to what is on the agenda that day?
A good question.
And I'm only referring to committees. During the full commission, when we do, they can read a point if they want, but like this committee right here.
I will look at it. The thing that changes it is that new change to the law that now requires
Okay.
all public meetings to have communication from the audience part of their agenda. So my quick, without having fully looked at
don't-
it,
you can look in.
no, we can't because of that. But that new law, of course, has just been put into place, so no one's really. Everyone has kind of gotten all those things in place, and as you've noticed, Lori's added that to the end of your agendas because that is now a legal requirement that you offer that. Prior to the change in that law, the answer would have been certainly you could do that. I am questioning, though, now with that change, if we would be able
If you
to
look
do
into that, I appreciate it, because when I read it, it says that, they can make it reasonable. In other words, you can't have 50 people come up here and say the same thing and take for filibuster or whatever. So the word reasonable in that bill or that law is
Yeah, and
ambiguous.
ultimately that would be.
And to me, it's reasonable to say the 4 things right here: illegal tire dumping, 911 are the things that our community can speak to, but not a pothole on Inman Street. I'm gonna use that as an example. But if you'll look into that, I appreciate it.
I will. I did want to point out, though, that
And the
if
time
we
limit as
do
well.
it,
The time
we
limit.
would be, I guess, on the front end of doing that because at this point it's new and everyone has started allowing it in full, which is you've got time limits, but anyone can speak as long as you go through the process. But I will definitely look at that.
And I guess I need to say, is there anyone in the room that would like to speak to the commission? This is your time. How about it? My man over here? Okay. There's nobody. All right. Thank you, Ms. Beltry, for what you did to help us. If that's all we have, I'll adjourn this meeting.